This is episode 80 of Stand Up for Thursday, April 9th, 2020. I am Pete Dominic. Shall we? Hello, my friends. I don't know where to begin today. Every day brings new discoveries, new anxieties. For me, new relationships. Keep reaching out and meeting listeners of this show, some of which have listened to me for a really long time, some of which are new, and reconnecting with old friends as well. But every day is so weird and so different and so unique in this time that we're in. How are you doing? Today is a very special episode with a very special guest. Film director, author, documentary filmmaker, activist, philanthropist. Tom Shadyac is my guest today. Tom directed Jim Carrey's Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, as well as Liar Liar and Bruce Almighty and Evan Almighty and Patch Adams and so many other films. And then Tom had a near-death experience in a bike accident, and he was already reevaluating his life and giving up on a lot of the material things in his life. But the concussion that he suffered in this accident led him to having suicidal tendencies. It's a long, fascinating, and really important story. But Tom decided to make a film called I Am, which is a really interesting documentary. He then wrote a book called Life's Operating Manual, which is a really interesting book. And I got to interview him while at SiriusXM for both the book and the film. And then I created a radio show for him with the channel that I created at SiriusXM, and we became personal friends. After I lost my job at Sirius, he was one of the many people I reached out to for counsel, and he was just simply amazing to me. And we talk about that conversation that we had a little bit in this conversation and much, much more. I'm really proud of this conversation. I'm really happy that Tom was willing to do it with me, and hopefully he will continue the conversation with me, and I think you're going to get a lot out of this. So I'm going to stop talking and get to my chat with Tom Shadyac. And by the way, just a little background, he has got really long locks, beautiful curly hair. He looks like the Christ. He looks like Jesus. And so I hit record right at the top. We were doing a Zoom chat. I'll release some of the video along with it. And I thought it would be great to capture when we see each other, because we have such an, I think, affinity for each other and respect for each other, that I just hit record right at the top, and that's where we start with Tom Shadyac right now on Stand Up. Yeah, baby. Looks just like Tom Shadyac. I was sure.
What's up, brother? What's up, man?
I was sure there'd be a drastic change in hair, at least.
No, this is it, man.
Still got it, man.
Saw. You know, there was this light fixture, light box at my house where the switch is, and it had Jesus's picture on it, and like a little light switch going through the heart, and that was the picture in and out of my room for my whole young adult life, and this was his look. So,
are you kidding me right now? That you had in your childhood bedroom, your light switch.
Yeah, the light switch was Jesus, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and a light coming out of the switch coming out of his heart.
Did it ever occur to you that was Jesus's erection? Did you ever think?
I think you have just shut out half the Western world with that. Comment.
That's all I could think about. Maybe I don't have
through the heart, my brother. You're taking it lower. It was through the heart, and the symbolism of the light, turning the anyway.
Welcome back to Taking It Lower with Pete Dominic. My guest is a very highbrow individual,
Yeah. Oh boy.
Whose films grossed over $2 billion. Of course,
Yeah.
Jim Carrey's Ace Ventura and Liar Liar and Bruce Almighty and so many more. And
Please, that's a good opening.
I think so. It's great to have you. Let me give the rest of this kind of introduction I put together. As a matter of fact, actually,
To make it short.
yeah, I want to make it short, but I want to make it. But I also feel like you're somebody who, while you're super modest and don't like any of this, I think it's good to give credibility to a guest. So I thought to make it long but still fun, you could say true or false, because I've got some of the introduction from Wikipedia, which is not where you should go.
Oh God, I promise you that it's not accurate, because it always has projects I'm doing and things. Anyway, but I'm sure. Go for it.
Growing up, he had a light switch in his room with a pitch. That's going to be added to it after this interview. In 2010, you directed I Am. You wrote, directed, and narrated this documentary film, which asks the question, what is wrong with the world and what can we do about it? True or false?
Yeah, true. And discovered what's right with the world in the process.
In 2007, you sold your mansion and moved into a mobile home park, albeit a nice one.
False. That was sold the place in 2003, I believe. Moved into the mobile home park in 2007. And yeah, it's a nice mobile home park. I'm not there anymore. I needed to free up some funds for a project that we're doing here in Memphis, Tennessee. So yeah, simplified it.
You opened a homeless shelter in Virginia.
Yeah, with a lot of other people, but I financed it. And I took the proceeds from Evan Almighty, the money that I made, and wanted to return it to the community. So we opened a homeless shelter and a day shelter, that feeds meals and counsels, et cetera, gives them a place to be.
Why did you do that?
Is that rhetorical or?
Why would you take the money from a film that you made and a lot of money and open a homeless shelter? And I guess that's where you're from, that area, right? In Virginia?
Yeah. Well, I went to school at the University of Virginia, from Northern Virginia. Why would I not do it? I started a few.
Because you could have all that money for yourself to do whatever you wanted with.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to do with it. And I never considered it mine in the first place. And that's what I hope we get into today, is a new way of thinking, which I think this COVID crisis is calling us to. We've been ignoring the signals, but I don't ask the question, how much can I get anymore? I ask the question, how much is enough?
Right. Well, let's get into all of it. Tom Shadyac is my guest. He is
no more true or false.
I can do another one. I got one more.
I heard some good ones.
Oh, yeah. What are the false ones?
At the Hollywood meeting the other day, and they said, yeah, there's some rumors about you that you joined a cult, or you gave away everything and you moved into the forest. That was a good one.
Well, I'm looking on your camera and you are in what looks like to be a fort built of sticks. Do you want to explain? No, Tom's in his house. Or wherever that room is.
I'm outside. I between this and a cave.
What else? What did you say to them? I mean, what?
It's, I forever will be correcting, adjusting the record of what happened to me. I think it's inconvenient to know what happened to me, which is, it's not a story of a person going crazy, but maybe a person finding sanity. And I think that's inconvenient.
Oh, why is it inconvenient?
Yeah, because the saying that it's hard for someone to see your point when their income depends on them not seeing it.
Right.
So I think it's that. Like,
so these film companies want you to be this amazing successful director and make them millions and millions of dollars with their films, and the idea that you might not want to do this or that or do it this way or that way is bizarre, obtuse, and wrong and stupid.
Well, I don't know if it's that dramatic, but it's like again, I say this I don't mean to be pejorative, but it's like an opium den, and when you stop doing opium, you're not really invited to the party. Mm-hmm. And the opium, I just redefined wealth, which we all know. It's just ideas we haven't put together.
What was that? What was that loud
We're going to have some of those pings. I don't know how to turn it off.
Is that on your computer?
Yeah.
It's messages, the messages
right,
app.
No, it is the messages, but how do I turn
out of that app? Quit that app.
All right. Let me
Because I can't edit that out. At the bottom of your screen, it's an apple. There's a blue.
I see it. Okay, now here we go. Now I just X out.
Just X out of it. I mean, you won't be getting your texts during this interview.
All right. That's fine. Cool. I'm out.
Redefining wealth. How do you define it?
Things that we know, Pete, and you know. The happiest people, happiest countries in the world, they value relationship. Look at us now, how much we value a relationship, being together, and we can't be together. We can be together this way, but certainly not in each other's presences anymore. It's the redefinition of wealth just simply lines up with the studies of positive psychology.
So let's talk about what is happening right now, because I went back to prepare for my conversation with you today, and I was watching your documentary, I Am, and reading your amazing book, which I actually keep by my bedside, wow. Life's Operating Manual with the Fear and Truth Dialogues. That's a high compliment. To keep somebody's book by your bedside, granted, I have a bookcase with 5 billion books there by my bedside. No, you have like a few books, and this is one of them, and it's like a Bible to me. I go back to it. But you talk about in the film a shift. A shift is coming. Maybe it came between now and some other time. Maybe it's been coming. Maybe there's been all kinds of shifts. But how do you refer to this? Is it that shift? Have there been others?
Yeah, I mean, I'm using the word messenger. Beautiful poem that was written about COVID being a messenger. If we all, we all have these spiritual ideas about everything being one, and that there's a universal intelligence, and it's in me, and it's in you, and it's in nature, then that means that universal intelligence is also in COVID, right? And so that COVID virus, which lived in stasis in nature, was in bats, and bats have higher metabolism, so it can live there. But until we upset nature, when we upset nature, it expresses itself and it jumps species. And so there's a message inside of that. Look, this is like Oprah used to say, you're going to get a little nudge from the universe, a little nudge. And then if you don't listen, you're going to get a smack, right? Mm. I had a concussion. I wasn't listening very well. I got a smack from the universe. And this is a smack. And if we don't understand what it's saying, rethink these structures. Rethink these systems, kind of reroute ourselves and who we are and our connection to everything. And if we don't, this smack will be nothing, I think, compared to what's to come.
But when you talk about interconnectedness and everything is one, sometimes there are plenty of people who are, either not religious or they call themselves, really scientifically based or whatever, that will ridicule that idea. But what illustrates that more than a virus jumping from an animal to a human, one human, to millions of humans, than a pandemic? What describes interconnectedness more than a viral outbreak? Right.
And that if there's a weak one amongst us, then none of us are strong.
What do you mean by that?
It's a scientific illustration. It's a scientific illustration. And this idea, this concept, I don't believe in flighty woo-woo concepts. I believe in practical reality. What is real? And even, if a science, based mind says, what's all this connection stuff? Well, any scientist will tell you there's no real end to me and beginning of you. Any science-based person will tell you that everything began as a single point of light energy, the tiniest particle that became everything. So we know we all come from one origin. So I don't consider this woo-woo. This is really practical. Like I've told you this before, our moral leaders were geniuses in the art of living. Our moral leaders were geniuses in the art of living. So we're not living now in balance with life. We go, we do, we take, we have this greed idea and we can take and we can dominate. And nature's saying, no, you got to get along with us. We got to get along with this, with all of life.
People are talking about during this time that nature's actually healing a little bit because we're staying inside and not doing so much damage.
I mean, tangibly, the air in LA is I'm in Memphis right now, but the air in LA is as clean as it's ever been. Animals are taking over some of the streets in some cities. Waters are turning clear again. We've always known that. I think if insects die off, all of nature would be disrupted. If mankind dies off, all of nature would flourish. So
it's a great way of putting it. You talk about this shift, this pandemic is basically, as you mentioned with the Oprah thing, telling us, it's screaming at you, you've got to change the way that you're living your lives, the way that you've structured your economy, your communities, right, the way that you treat each other. And even, Tom, if we all heard that signal, that scream from the universe saying you have to change, even if we all agreed that that was the problem, we would still have so many disagreements and fights and even wars over how to change it. And it would seem that that's inevitable in this situation. How do we come to any kind of common place about what the problem is, much less what the solutions are now, much less any other event, which there's not been one similar in our lifetimes like this?
I'll answer that, right? And then we'll go to what's the meaning of life. That was a big one. Well, I think the first thing we do is the toughest thing, which is stop looking out. Stop looking out, right? The problem is out there. The problem is in a president who doesn't understand. The problem is in a capitalist system that doesn't, respect the full breadth of humanity. No, the problem's in us. The problem's in us. And so any true revolution starts with the personal revolution. And so as long as I am seeing something as other, then any finger pointing out, you need to look back. Those three fingers have to go back. So I think right now we're looking at systematic solutions. If we could just get rid of this president, or if we could just get rid of this administration, or if this administration, on the other side could just keep in power and get rid of the Democrats, and everything is somebody else's problem. And so the real work is interior, and then it expresses out.
Can you give an example of that, the interior work that needs to be done, that has been done, that you've done?
Well, how about your life? How about my life? What are the biggest growth points of our life? Crises, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You were let go of a show. I talked to you about that a while ago, and it was hard. It was hurtful, right? Right. It was hurtful.
It was. It's been the worst time of my life, and you were kind enough to, jump on the phone with me. You've always been kind, very kind to me with your time, and it was one of the most important conversations I've had during this difficult time. So thank you. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but let's talk about worst, because I think worst is like cohabitating with best. Because I heard a part of you. I haven't heard all of your shows, but I've heard enough to feel a different place in you, especially the shows where you get vulnerable, where you say, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So much of us is putting up these structures, and all these things are reflections of our ego. I know what I'm doing. I'm a capitalist system. I know what I'm doing. This is the only way to do it. And that vulnerability that comes in crisis, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't really know. I want to listen. I want to learn more from you, from nature, from old mystics, from ancient wisdom. I want to be humble about this. And so that's, my concussion. That's like, stop. We got to root in your body a little more, Tom. We got to root in something a little more substantive.
What is something?
I see you getting twisted about this. What's the twist?
The twist, I guess, is while I don't disagree with anything you've said that we have to look inwards and the problems start with us, I still do. I want to have a conversation about, systemic changes that need to take place and shifts and that need to take place with societies. I was almost going to say attitude, but then that would go right back to your point. But we can look inward and we can find out what the problem is. We can search for that humility that I certainly found that you're talking about, and still not see the change that we need collectively. So the individual versus, the more collective society. And so what does this pandemic do that creates a change collectively, or am I still asking the wrong question?
Well, I think that what happens is we think, okay, if I'm just changing in my little world, what the heck is that going to do for the good of the world?
Tell that to the guy at the wet market in Wuhan.
Yes, right. But tell that to the guy who created the conditions that's acceptable.
More importantly,
someone lives in those conditions, that we've created a world that can upset nature just and upset the balance.
Yes.
Right. So look, I don't want to minimize the systemic work that needs to happen. But if we change a system and we haven't changed, guess what's going to happen to the system? It's going to go away, and it's going to be then reinvented to reflect who we all are.
It's like a diet. I tried a new diet and I lost some weight, but I went right back to my old ways of eating and not exercising, because it's the internal work that I'm not doing, not the stupid diet.
Because oftentimes when we're overeating, things are eating us. What is eating us? Oh my gosh, it's a self-reflection. It's an image thing. It's a part of trauma that I haven't healed. Right. So we're going to go back to eating. It's got to start here, right? It's got to start. Now, look, again, we have major work to do as a society, but can you imagine if humble people came together and said, let's start with, I don't know.
Yeah, I can. And I'm thinking about that a lot. And that's a lot of what I wanted to discuss with you. But so you and I are two of those people. And that's what hopefully this conversation is about. What have you, if anything, learned or been impressed with or disappointed by even during this situation? I keep calling it the pandemic. I don't know. What do you call it? People call it COVID.
Oh yeah. Crisis, which is, oh yeah, this is how you want to live? Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, here's the consequence.
Right. The slap in the face. What have you discovered? Anything? Disappointments, inspirations, writing? What discoveries have you made during this time? Oh yeah.
Look, I'm hurting like everyone. I'm in touch with a community that's really impacted by this stuff. It's an underserved community, but I'm not engaging with as many people are constant media. So I pick and choose. But I saw a newscaster do a meditation. A major newscaster took a moment and just said, "Let's take a breath together."
Who was that?
That's the kiss of death. Right? A breath on the air, a breath of silence on the air is death.
Yeah, control room panics, edit that out.
Yes. And she took a breath. And you can feel that there's cracks in the system. You can feel that all of our structures, these facades, this ego-built facade is being cracked. And so, I don't want to wax eloquent. I've had friends, friend just passed away yesterday from this, from that mobile home park where I lived, and it's touching everybody. But there's also a revelation that's happening, and I hope and pray. My fear is that we go back to normal. I hope and pray that we don't.
Right. I don't think we can. I just don't know. Have you any predictions, or have you seen anybody making predictions that you think are probably likely to happen or not happen? Because I think that's the most fascinating question right now. By the way, I think every conversation, like small talk conversations, are fascinating. There's nothing, no time in human that we've lived through that has been like this, and so anything you talk about is interesting. But have the conversation about what's going to happen as a result, I feel like all the best experts that are in my life that I have available to me can't answer that.
I think nature has the answer.
The birds got it. Yeah, you're right.
Well, they have it's like learn, or the lesson will return, and it'll return in a harsher way. Learn that the mystics and the saints and the sages weren't idealists. They were realists. structure your society based on that you take care of each other, that you value taking care of each other right now like you value greed. Put those people. I just called the most successful person in America, the richest person in America, not Jeff Bezos, but Father Gregory Boyle, who built Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles, went into a gang-infested neighborhood, listened, learned, was edified by these beautiful, resilient lives, and it's now got the largest gang intervention program in the world. That's wow. A rich person to me. And I don't think that we necessarily put that first on our list when we talk about wealth.
I've been beating that drum since I first heard you say it, redefining wealth. I was hanging out with some friends of mine from high school. I remember a couple of years ago after I met you and read your stuff and watched your doc. And one of my buddies from high school says, well, Matt is like super successful. And I said, what do you mean? Why? How is he successful? He's like, he makes millions of dollars as an investor on Wall Street. And then I said, is he happy? I said, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like, how are we measuring wealth? How are we measuring success? How are we finding balance in our life is always a great question. So I'm glad that you just, keep beating that drum, and certainly you've lived it. You've changed your life so much, Tom, in so many different ways, and you've seemingly lived so many different lives. What else are you, though, observing other people either catching up or even teaching you, again, back to this question, during the pandemic? Is there anything else that you're noticing, that you're observing, that you're feeling for the first time?
Well, I'm constantly amazed by the resiliency of the community that I'm blessed to be in relationship with. A friend of mine said the other day, a dear close friend named Chris Dean, who father was killed. It was actually the other day, they were just celebrating his birthday. He was shot 20 times in our neighborhood, was killed when Chris was 4. Chris himself died on the operating table when he was 2, came back to life, felt very strongly he was here for a reason. He's a leader in our community. And as I was describing what people in, my showbiz life and my, quote, affluent life are going through, Chris said to me, oh, yeah, that's what it's like to be Black. You don't have opportunities. You don't have doors open to you. You're not able to go places. And he went into this beautiful articulation. And again, I feel like that's a lesson for all of us, those of us behind gates. We trying to block out vulnerability, and Chris and his community have lived in vulnerability every day. We're thinking, wow, the stock market's crashed. I don't know if I'm going to be okay next year. They've never known if they were going to be okay next week.
Right.
Yeah,
and
we're getting a chance to feel this with each other. And it's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Resilience is something I had to learn losing my job, and my wife had learned her entire life, but I really hadn't struggled with that much tragedy, health issues, or financial issues. And now here I am, my dad has a heart attack, I lose my job, my daughter is prescribed a back brace for her scoliosis, which isn't life or death, but it's certainly life altering and really challenging. Then this pandemic starts. I lose all my gigs. I had started crawling myself out and was doing well. And you look at people who have been dealt so much more, maybe every day, every week, or often throughout their life, and they look at a shift or a difficult time like this one, and they have the ability to deal with it in such a more resilient way because they've been there before, where it's shocking to people of privilege.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying about.
Yeah. And I'm
Christine.
not the first to say it.
No, but
while we sit on the cushion of advantage, we fall asleep.
On the cushion of advantage, we fall asleep.
Yeah. That's an Emerson. My biggest challenge with the president, I don't look pejoratively at all at the president. I mean, he's a teacher here as well. It's how we reflect what he's teaching us. Is that the direction I want to move? No, I want to move in a very different direction, but I don't feel pejoratively.
Then you don't feel that way about anybody then.
Well, I'm human. I have my moments, but no, I don't. Because look, it's a mystic saying, but I believe it's scientific, practical reality. Everything in front of you is not only a reflection, but it's God in her myriad disguises. So, but what I do notice about our president is a rule and a law at work. When you are not right, I don't think anybody who is for the president would argue with the fact that he has a big ego. He leads with the ego, and he's right. And when you're right and you fail to admit you're wrong, you no longer are able to learn. You have not created the climate for learning, because all learning comes from, I didn't know that. Pete just taught me something that I didn't know. Pete, in essence, was further evolved about this idea than I was. And if you don't walk with that humility and that openness, you can't learn. And if you can't learn, you atrophy. And what I see is I look at his skill set, again, whether you agree or not, I look at his skill set 20 years ago, and I see sharper language. I see a sharper mind, again, not where my mind wants to move, but I see a sharper person. And I think that's been dulled because he's atrophied. He can't learn, unable to learn, or he's chosen not to learn. Mm. And so for me, this always calls in, again, humility, humility, humility. It comes from the word, the HUM is from soil, soil, humble, grounding, being part of the earth. That's where we come from. That's where we return to. And it's a dissolution of this ego. Ego. The word go is in it, so it's got to go.
Yeah. How have you personally dealt with it, or do you still have to deal with it? People find out, they meet you. You've got this great place that you created in Memphis, Memphis Rocks, right?
Yeah, it's a campus. It's a campus that Memphis Rocks is our gym. It's a 32,000 square foot rock climbing gym that is one of the best state of the art rock climbing gyms in the world. But it's in an underserved neighborhood. People say that's the worst place for a gym, and I'm like, no, that's the best place.
Exactly, it's the best place
for a gym,
for any place to get people.
Economic structures won't support it. Yeah, but the social moral fabric is what supports it and what needs it.
Well, when they find out that you have been involved with all of the great Hollywood films that you've directed and been a part of, I mean, how does your ego react when new people learn about you? How do you deal with on a daily basis your own ego? What is your relationship with it, and how has it changed?
Well, I'm more aware of it than ever.
Really?
And I get little ego smacks all the time. I really read the Riot Act to some friends here in town the other day because the community that I work in wasn't getting the support it needs. And the way I did it definitely was influenced by ego. I thought I was important. I thought the work I was doing was important. And
the work you're doing is important. What do you mean?
On the one hand, this kind of work, the work that I'm a part of is important, but the work doesn't necessarily need me. There's something bigger than Tom Shadyac at work. And if I trust that, I don't need to get riled up. Like, I don't need to start spewing the idea of there are consequences to this. Life will show the consequences. There's the thief steals from himself. I don't need to say, hey, you're a thief and damn it. So I'm learning more and more that I'm not important. I mean, there's this thing called the Enneagram. I don't know if any of your listeners have done it. It's a way of categorizing a personality type. And I know that can be very limiting if you look at it from the surface, but deep down, we all sort of have models that we follow because of traumas that have happened. And I'm what you call a 4, and a 4 thinks they're special. The 4 always wants to be special because I wasn't special as a kid, right? My brother was special. My voice wasn't special. So I got to prove that I'm special.
Well, then I must be a 7 because I hear you say that. And the question comes, well, then what is my purpose for getting up in the morning? I sit here and question even, the work that I'm doing, this podcast and comedy and anything that I do, because I want to make a difference. I want to have an impact, and I want to have a reason for my work that I do. And if if it's not, if it's, how should I think otherwise? And when people email me or tell me how much the show means to them, I'm like, well, that's good. I hope it does, because otherwise, why am I doing it?
Let's deconstruct it.
Go ahead.
Let's just look at it from a different angle. And it may let in an infinite power that is what put this whole thing together in the first place. So why do you do what you do?
Well, I like it a lot.
You said you want to make a difference.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to flip that on its head. What if you're doing what you're doing to be different? And by being influenced by myself and some of the listeners that you had on the other day, and you heard their stories and you were edified by those stories. What if you're doing it to be different? And then by being different, you can reflect that difference into the world.
I'll take it.
So Father Gregory Boyle says, and again, I'm being taught this as well. I'm such an imperfect model of this, that his kind of work, working with those gang members, rehabilitation, and then actually being in kinship with them and learning about their strength. He says, if you want to make a difference, this probably isn't the work for you. If you want to be different, this is the work for you. And so I came to my neighborhood originally with a lot more ego than I hope I have now. But I came with, look, I'm Tom Shadyac. I have something to offer. And little did I know how much they had to offer me.
Right.
So they've changed me. They've humbled me. And now I'm in kinship with them. And I'm edified by that. And I can't help but reflect the edification that has happened because they have made me different. And so now I make more of a difference because my goal isn't to make a difference. It's to be different, right? It's the Zen philosophy of the archer that aims for nothing is the most accurate archer.
The pause is me thinking about things, as often happens in conversation with you.
Get out the pipes out and get out the 420 pipes and okay.
Oh, no, that's with or without it. It's profound. I mean, those philosophies, all these philosophies and writers and mystics that you've studied always are. I mean, but it's also fun to look at things when you are stoned and see different things than when you're not. I've had that happen a lot as well. You hear the same quote, you read the same book, or have a similar conversation and see it very, very differently. And how sometimes.
Yeah, well, I haven't smoked in 30 plus years. I haven't done any quote drugs of any sort. And the mystics are the drug for me. They are the ones that give you that different perspective. And if it wasn't, like I when I hear the word philosophy, it feels like it floats. And I'm not really interested in philosophy that floats. I'm interested in stuff that is in the meat and marrow and the bones of life. Like talk to me about like the cell structures and talk to me about economic paradigms. I want to know how things work. And if the moral philosophies don't walk in the real world, I'm not interested.
I like that. Yeah, there's a lot of quote moral philosophies that have been debunked over and over, but keep getting tried. It seems.
Well, I don't think so. I don't say I don't think so, but I don't think they've been certainly tried enough. I mean, Emerson said, "Love as the basis of the state has never been tried."
Well, right. I mean, but whatever you would describe as, the impact that destroying the environment has on our health and the economy. What is the economic term for the consequences that don't get counted? I forget.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
But we're realizing that now more than ever. And there is a shift and a change towards cleaner energy and a different kind of living and away from eating all these animals and factory farming and so on. But it's still underpinned by a system or an economic philosophy that dominates most people's thinking and is growing, not waning, it would seem, which is the kind of unregulated free market capitalism.
Yeah. Nothing can dominate our thinking if we don't allow it. It's us. It's all a reflection of us. I think there's a person with ego in the White House now because we're all dealing with our ego. We're getting to see it right in front of us.
That's a really, really succinct way of saying what a lot of people have been saying about him and why he's there. Are you scared of getting this virus? Do you get scared? What's your relationship with fear these days? Because I learned a lot about fear in my relationship with it, reading your book, Life's Operating Manual, with the fear and truth dialogues. Your relationship with fear is intimate, or you couldn't have written this, but how much have you learned and how do you deal with it now?
Well, fear is an instructor. It's an instructor. it's there to teach you, just like this virus is there to teach us. So, yeah, of course I have fear. I have fear all the time. I have fear for my own health, for the neighborhood that I live and work in. I have fear for humanity, but it's what I do with that fear, because truth is much more powerful than fear. I look at it this way. Any fear that's real is truth, right? So any fear that's real is truth, right? So if I walk out and I'm careless today, there's a decent chance I might get COVID. That's a truth. So that fear is true. So I take that quote fear, which is a truth, and then I will operate accordingly. I'll wear a mask. Excuse me. I'll wear a mask. I'll be careful in public. But a fear that's not true. Well, what if I, excuse me, what if I go a little further with the wealth that I've been blessed in and invest in a community? What if I go even further so that I no longer feel like, everyone says you got to be set up for the rest of your life. What if I don't feel that anymore? Well, is that fear true that I'll die? No, it's not true. There's no way. Pete, I know the fear that you went through when you lost your show. You've got a family to take care of.
Yeah, I still am in it too.
Yeah. Well, I promise you that if we remain vulnerable enough with each other, that you and your family will be okay. There's just no way that between your family, people like myself, people like Peter Coyote who love you, that we're not going to rally to you. And what has to go is our ego that I got it. I'm Pete Dominick. I'm in control. I'm Tom Shadyac. I'm a great artist. I'm in control. And when that goes, we allow this beauty of life to penetrate our own life. And it's hard. It's hard. It's a tough thing to do.
Thank you for saying that. I remember that you said that to me privately, and to hear it again is hard not to get emotional, and no problem having the emotion, but I want to continue with this conversation that I'm taping. But Tom...
The emotion entering this conversation is probably the best thing that we could do.
Sure. I just don't want to weep.
But look...
Not that I'm embarrassed. I cry every day. I'm not embarrassed. I just don't like to have it on tape and to have it during a conversation. There's no problem. It's not a problem. It's just...
I tell you, Pete, this is one of the ideas I think we've got to like rethink, because I know for myself, and you can ask your audience this, I don't know how many shows you did where you were emotional. Look, we all put on a presentational voice when we're out there in the media. But that breath the other day by that newscaster was not that presentational voice, and it was powerful. And you did a number of shows where you got damn vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that was, to me, that was a show that just dropped to another level. It spoke directly to my heart, directly to my soul. And I felt a power about it that I think is beautiful. And I want to personally invite people into that kind of power by saying, I cried the other day on a phone call. I didn't plan on it.
Yeah.
When I was talking to some affluent friends, I just, for some reason, I just said, I'm hurting. And they have responded with such kindness. And had I said, I'm good, here I am, here are my ideas, I'm good, I was hurting. And it gave them a chance to be present for me. And it made a big difference.
Well, the thing I've realized is that, and you said this at the very beginning of our conversation, we just forget how you phrase it now, of course, but that the way we look at things so backwards and so wrong. And when I started, you told me in our private conversation that it was okay to take help. I'd spent the last 10 years of my life mentoring people and helping other people. And I didn't like the position of asking other people for help. And you said to me, I'll never forget this. This is the most important lesson you taught me that day, and I've really carried this one through every day, is when I help people, you said, when you help people, did it make you feel good? And I said, yeah, it made me feel great, for sure. It wasn't just altruistic. It made me feel good that I was helping other people, opening doors, providing opportunities, advice, etc. And you said, well, why would you steal that feeling from me? And the impact that had on me right there, I was like, well, okay. And then it was like one of those moments where someone says something, gives you advice, and it just resonates so much. Now I opened up completely to the universe. I'm like, I need help. I need some help. And I have been given so much that I now feel the ability to give it again. And so now what the shift that's been made on the podcast to some extent is I still need help. I'm still struggling. But I know that a lot of people are new to this given the pandemic. A lot of you have just lost your jobs. A lot of you are returning to drugs and alcohol, have had relationships destroyed. So I now want to be able to help you by just being in a conversation with you. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a giver. But if I can help you in any way, I'm in that place now because I've been through it. And that advice was, I don't know what you would add to that now. This is the longest I wanted to talk.
I think it's beautiful. I think when you say I want to help those people in the future, I would suggest that you continue to share your helplessness. Because once they get in touch with their helplessness, once they stop trying to control, I can stop drinking on my own. No, I can't. I need my community. That's why organizations like AA rose up. When the ego finally shatters, you wake up in a ditch and you're broken and you say, I can't do it alone. And so I love what you're saying. And as long as you keep reflecting that you're also in need, that the helper is often the one that is that most helpless. I realize more and more my own vulnerability and helplessness. Our community here, the structure that we've started, this foundation, this campus for art and recreation and healing. I'm trying to start the first nonprofit major film studio in a terribly underserved neighborhood. It could go away tomorrow. And when this thing happened, we're very much paycheck to paycheck, contribution to contribution. I thought, well, we're done, but we're not. We're just more and more aware of our vulnerability and our reliance on each other to step into each other's lives and do what they can for each other, do what we can for each other.
One of the things, you've been a great teacher to me throughout all of this, but the best teacher has been my wife, because she's with me every day and she's been through so much and she's learned so much and how to deal with it and adapt. And she kept telling me in all my worst days, there would always be some kind of stay in the moment. You're worried about things that are weeks away, months away. Right now, you're okay. And talking about being grateful for what you have and so on. And it's so fascinating, Tom, because you didn't know when that was going to be proven true. It's proven true every day. But this virus is the most obvious evidence that we should be living in the moment and one day at a time, because I'm worried about all these other things. I was definitely not worried about this virus. That wasn't on my radar. It's a game changer for everybody, and it's proof of what she had been saying and what obviously you've been saying and teaching and so many others, that you have no idea what's going to happen next. So stop worrying about it.
Yeah, that's good. Write that down. I love what Thoreau said. We make ourselves sick, laying up something for a sick day. and I think this is one large, the COVID virus being a metaphor for that idea worldwide, which is, so you want to get yourself so safe, which none of nature's really whole safe, right? It's all at risk and vulnerable. Sure. And in play and in an inner system of interplay. But you want to make yourself so safe that you'll destroy everything. So you never have that sick day. Well, guess what? Here comes the sick day, because that's not how it works. That's not how it works. So, look, I do think the universal intelligence that started all this stuff knows what it's doing, and that this is going to be an opportunity. Of course, this is an apocalyptic time, and apocalypse doesn't mean end of world. It means to reveal, to uncover. And I think the new way is being uncovered. So what the heck would the world look like if Father Gregory Boyle ran it?
Right.
What would it look like? It's not as complex as we think.
It's
when
not?
You boil it down to moral principles, right? There'd be a heck of a lot more porch yoga, which is going around all my neighborhood. They're doing porch yoga. And I'm like, why have we never valued porch yoga?
Right. How does porch yoga work? Like one person is teaching and everybody's watching, or they're just individually doing yoga on their porch to be outside?
my neighbors, there's a couple that live next door. They do it together, but porch yoga can be what you want it to be.
Well, right? It's funny because I am very close with these folks at a community called Serenbe down south. I've got to put you in touch with them outside of Atlanta, and a guy named Steve Nygren, and he's created this community where one of the regulations is every home has to have a front porch. It's encouraging people to get out and see each other and connect with each other. But the truth is most neighborhoods, I don't know about most or statistics, but at least, where I live, we have backyards that are fenced in. You don't hang out in the front of your house for risk that you might actually bump into somebody.
Right. That's changing.
Yeah.
All changing.
Yeah. I'm seeing neighbors that I didn't know, existed. I saw a lady walking her cat. I was like, I didn't know we had a cat lady.
There's so many things like that happening. A guy just told me a simple story the other day from Nantucket. He's never made juice with his kid, like he made juice with his kid. That's, if we think of that as a sacred act, right? A sacred act, then we could rethink what is sacred in our society and get away from this notion that it's more, that growth is the God. All these things are false gods. We've tried them. How's it working out for you? Right. Look at the statistics, Pete. The statistics are so apparent in front of us. 380, this is Vandana Shiva's work, 388 people in the year 2010 had as much wealth as half the world. That's 388. It's a small amount, but still, that's some people. Then a year later, it goes down to 177. Then in the year 2017, 8 people owned as much wealth as half the world. Now it's 3. It's soon going to be 1. And you're telling me that works, that one person will own as much wealth as half the world. And that works. Where do you see that in nature? Oh, I see it in viruses that take the body over and think they're getting robust and then they kill off their host. I see it in cancer, where cancer takes the body and growth, and then it takes the body. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. So like, that's what I'm after, a society that actually works.
Going back to where we started again, you said, and I love this. I think about this all the time and I'm reminded about it. Enough. What is enough?
Right.
And, the opposite of enough is growth. I got to get more. I got to have more. I've got to have this car. I've got to have this pool. I've got to have this clothing. I've got to take this vacation. Then, and only then, when I have this title, will I be happy. And then you get it. If you get it.
Let's take that needle inward, okay? Let's just take that finger inward, okay, and point it inward. Why do I got to have the car, right? Let's assume you've got something that you can get around in, or you have transportation, but I got to have the one that does what?
A Tesla. I want a Tesla.
Well, Tesla may not be the right car to use because it has actually some value in the world. Like
a Mercedes-Benz. I want a Mercedes-Benz.
Something that is, that's going back. What have you not healed that you have to have that car? Not because some people, love design. That's their thing. Some people love the performance of a certain kind of vehicle, can feel it. And those things may be part of the creative expression of whatever this divine thing is. But if it's out of ego, because my neighbor got one. Right. Because I drive down the street and I feel like someone, okay, now let's point the finger in. Well, let's start to talk about how to heal that. Because then you can really ask the question, what's enough?
Well, I am struggling legitimately with the idea that I knew, Tom, what was enough. I understood this premise actually really well. I'm pretty proud of myself for it.
Yeah.
And I literally, I had a number, a salary, and I had kind of a lifestyle in terms of vacations, and the kids could, go to these camps, which aren't expensive. And we have this house, and I knew what it was. It was pretty well delineated. I had it outlined, and I got it, Tom. I got it, and I had it, and I had this balance that most people never define, much less get. I had that. It wasn't, in my mind, too much. We have, modest living, I think, in many ways. And I lost it, and now I don't know if I'll be that happy again because I have to worry about trying to get that back. I want to downgrade my expectations, my wants, needs, and desires, but I also want to be happy.
Yeah, well, I would suggest something different to you. Happiness is a very misunderstood idea because happy people are also sad a lot. They're also in mourning a lot. They're also humbled a lot. They are every color of the rainbow. And the word I believe we're growing into is contentment, because contentment is content, what's on the inside. Happy people don't walk around just buzzing all day. Yeah. That's creepy, right? So I suggest to you that you're a richer person. Whose story do I want to hear, and whose story do I want to tell my kid? The Pete Dominick who he hit this radio show, right? And then he was a rock and roll star for the rest of his life. Like it's just amazing. Like Pete Dominick, like everybody, Pete Dominick. Okay. You're like, okay, I'm next, please. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you about Pete Dominick. And he had this radio show and it was different, right? He's kind of CNN, but trying to come at it from a little bit of the moral traditions, right? It's different. And then life needed more from Pete Dominick. It wanted more of a conversation. So it kicked Pete Dominick's butt. And Pete Dominick, being a part of this intelligence, kicked his own butt subconsciously because he knew he wanted to grow. So this guy loses his show. Now I'm interested. Now the entire human species steps forward. What happened when he lost his show? Well, number one, I've heard his podcast, so I know he got closer to his wife. I know he's never been more appreciative of her as a teacher and as a friend. I know he's never been more appreciative of people like Pete Coyote in his life, and even someone like myself.
For sure.
And so Pete Dominick is deepened. So now he's got a new podcast. Well, there's many people listening. We don't know yet because it's just a ripple that was put in a pond. It's a new ripple. We don't know the end of this ripple. But Pete Dominick's different. Already, I think that Pete Dominick is richer than the first Pete Dominick.
Pete Dominick is crying again.
Yeah, well, it takes tears to reduce us away from these ideas that we think we know what we're doing. We are not in control, Pete. We are not in control. There are 5 meditations that came out of this beautiful spiritualist that a friend of mine works for, Richard Rohr. Life is difficult. You are not important. You are not in control. You are going to die, and it's not about you. Holy smokes. All difficult. Wait a minute, I'm important. Yeah, I get it, Tom, but if you go away tomorrow, the work that you were doing is bigger than you. It's not about you.
I'm looking it up. Tom Shadyac. I could talk to you for 2 more hours, but I'm going to save those for the next few weeks because you have other people to talk to, other things to do, and I love how much time you gave me and everything that you said. I so enjoyed it. It's been too long since we spoke, and I'm glad that I recorded it because the whole idea now is that I have access to great, amazing people like you, and so should everybody else. So I hope they enjoy it, and I know that they will. Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Been a joy.
Well, how about that, everybody? Tom Shadyac. If you hadn't heard of him, you're welcome. And either way, you've got to get his book. Go buy it right now. Life's Operating Manual with the Fear and Truth Dialogues. I'm telling you, go buy that book. It sits by my nightstand. Also, go watch the documentary, I Am. We are in a shift as we speak, and there's a lot of really good stuff in that documentary, and Tom Shadyac is an amazing guy. If you're in Memphis, go say hi to him. That's all I got for you today, and I appreciate you joining me. I appreciate your subscription on Patreon. So many people have been subscribing over the past few days. Keep it coming. Tell your friends. Spread the word. Patreon.com/Pete Dominick. I'll keep bringing these smart voices to you, and I'll keep bringing your voices on the air as well. If you want to join me in the conversation, then let me know. All right. Hang in there. I'm here for you. I love you. Goodbye.